Welcome to DRS Zone. It is absolutely fantastic to have you joining us today for a brand new deep dive. We are coming at you with high energy today because, honestly, the research we have in front of us is mind-blowing.
Oh, it really is.
It reads like a thriller novel for anyone who follows modern motorsport.
Wow.
We are doing a massive, highly technical breakdown provided by a track engineer. This is an insider, someone with serious, hands-on experience in the highest levels of electric racing, and they have turned their analytical eye directly toward the brand new 2026 Formula One regulation.
Yeah, and getting this kind of unfiltered, raw perspective is just a rare treat. I mean, we are looking at an analysis of what is actually happening behind the closed doors of the paddock.
Right.
We're stripping away all the PR fluff, all the corporate statements, and looking straight at the engineering reality of these new cars.
And just quickly, before we tear into this, we have to mention that this segment is part of our news coverage of recent F1 events, because our mission today is vital. We are going to figure out why Formula One is reportedly hitting the absolute panic button. I mean, slamming the panic button after just a single race under these new rules.
Just one race.
We have to understand what is driving this incredibly sudden, aggressive reaction, and more importantly, what it means for the very future of motorsport as an entertainment product.
Because you have to realize that a sporting body of this immense size completely rethinking a massive regulatory overhaul this quickly. It's virtually unprecedented.
It never happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It speaks to a level of internal alarm, of pure panic, that you simply do not see in modern, highly corporate racing series.
Okay, let's unpack this. The core issue driving this entire narrative is that Formula One is reportedly already deep into studying the telemetry and driver feedback from the opening Australian Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And they aren't just looking at it for, long-term learning for next year. They are aggressively scrutinizing the upcoming Chinese Grand Prix to potentially push through emergency mid-season regulation changes.
It's wild.
We are talking about fundamental technical shifts that could arrive as early as the Japanese Grand Prix, which is only race three of the season.
And to give you a sense of why this timeline is just so unbelievably compressed, we really have to look at the severe disconnect between the spectator experience and the driver experience.
Hey, the gap between the two.
Because if you are sitting in the grandstands or if you're watching a wide tracking shot on your television at home, these 2026 cars, they might look completely normal.
They look fast.
They have the silhouette of an F1 car, they have the speed, but inside the cockpit, the situation is dire. According to the engineering insights we have here, the drivers are claiming the cars feel utterly artificial.
Artificial. That's a scary word for F1.
Terrifying. They are describing this fundamental disconnect between their physical inputs and the car's behavior. They're basically arguing it no longer feels like traditional Formula One.
And look, when the people actually sitting in the cockpit start throwing around words like artificial, the executives in the boardroom start sweating profusely.
Oh, they panic.
The commercial panic happening behind the scenes here is palpable. You have to understand, the sport relies entirely on a very fragile ecosystem of purist, globally recognized superstar drivers.
The titans of the sport.
The absolute titans. We are talking about names like Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso. The underlying terror for Formula One right now is that if these cars are miserable and algorithmic to drive, these purists might just walk away.
They might just say, I'm done.
Exactly. They don't need the money. They want to race.
And the commercial implications of a mass exodus of top-tier talent like that, it's staggering. Formula One cannot sustain its massive global footprint if the championship is fought strictly by the younger, newer names.
Right.
Now, with all due respect to the immense, undeniable talent of drivers like Oscar Piastri or Kimi Antonelli,
Phenomenal driver.
incredible drivers.
Yeah.
But a global juggernaut like Formula One requires established superstars to maintain its worldwide television draw. People tune in to watch the absolute legends of the sport battle the limits of physics.
Not the limits of a computer.
Yeah, exactly. If those legends publicly declare that it isn't real racing anymore, they walk out the door, the brand value just hemorrhages overnight.
Which naturally leads us to these emergency fixes they are supposedly cooking up in the background to stop the bleeding.
What's fascinating here is the sheer mechanics of the proposed short-term fixes. The track engineer in our source material suggests that F1 might try to drop cable to appease these superstar drivers and keep them engaged.
Wait, drop cable. Is that a paddock slang term for just pulling the plug on the electrical rules entirely?
Essentially, yes. It means backtracking aggressively on their own meticulously planned electrical output regulations.
Wow.
One specific, immediate fix being floated right now in the paddock is a fundamental alteration to the power ratio between the internal combustion engine and the electric motor. They are looking at trading, say, 75 kilowatts of electrical power for 75 kilowatts of thermal combustion power.
So they're just turning down the battery and turning up the engine, just brute forcing it.
That is exactly the idea. And the beauty of it is it wouldn't require a ground-up redesign of the chassis.
Okay.
The suspension geometry, the aerodynamic packaging, that could all largely stay the same. But it would function as a massive, very public Band-Aid.
A Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
Exactly. It is an attempt to mask the underlying drivability issues of the powertrain without the governing body having to explicitly admit that the entire 2026 hybrid concept is fundamentally flawed.
But hold on, doesn't F1 need massive automotive brands to survive in the modern era?
That's the argument, yeah.
That brings up what the source material calls the manufacturer trap. The entire premise of this 2026 regulation change was supposedly built around projecting a strong green message.
Right.
They wanted to signal intense environmental responsibility to lure in major hesitant automotive manufacturers, specifically targeting the Volkswagen Group and Audi.
And the source views that entire justification with a very, very high degree of skepticism. The commentary bluntly calls the specific green messaging a bit of a corporate misdirection.
Smoke and mirrors.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have to remember, Formula One cars have utilized highly advanced hybrid technology for over a decade now.
Since 2014.
Yes. The message that F1 is an environmentally conscious laboratory for hybrid road car technology was already well established in the public consciousness. So the source asks a critical question of you, the listener.
Yeah.
Do you, as a fan, actually care about this extreme push-to-the-limit electric dominance in the power unit? Or is Formula One unnecessarily mangling the sport's DNA just to appease a boardroom in Germany?
Especially when you consider who actually holds the power in this sport. Let's be real. If Audi decides to pack up and leave tomorrow, the sport survives. It doesn't miss a beat.
Exactly the point the source makes. Historically, there is only one brand that has ever held true existential leverage over Formula One.
Ferrari.
And that is Ferrari. The old paddock adage remains true today. Formula One is Ferrari, and Ferrari is Formula One.
Yep.
Red Bull is an energy drinks company that happens to be brilliant at building race cars. Haas is a machine tool manufacturer, reshaping the entire foundational engineering philosophy of the sport to secure a brand new entrant like Audi. It seems like a massive, unforced historical error.
And to highlight just how extreme this new battery technology really is, you have to hear this incredible anecdote from the source material. It paints such a vivid, almost comical picture.
I love this story.
It's crazy. Back in 2023, elite engineers from Audi's Dakar rally team, we are talking about people who build vehicles to survive the most grueling electric and hybrid conditions on the planet.
The desert, absolute punishment.
Right. They were looking at the early blueprints for these 2026 F1 cars, and they were absolutely amazed by the sheer massive capacity of the batteries required to make these regulations work. They described the designs as functioning like massive mobile phone batteries that dictate absolutely everything the car is capable of doing.
The reaction of those Dakar engineers is incredibly telling because they actually thought the blueprints were a mistake.
They thought it was a typo.
Or perhaps an early, unrefined draft. They looked at the energy flow charts and assumed that once Formula One's governing body realized the cars would be incredibly powerful exiting a slow corner, but would then completely drain their batteries and essentially run out of power halfway down a long straight.
Just die on the straight.
Right. They assumed the rule makers would obviously step in and change it, but they didn't. They pushed forward with this mathematically perfect but practically compromised set of rules.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that specific issue, running out of power on the straight, brings us to the absolute most baffling, mind-bending technical concept of these new 2026 rules.
Ready to this one.
It is a term that is going to dominate the broadcast commentary. You are going to hear it every Sunday. Super clipping.
Yes. And to fully grasp the utter madness of super clipping, we first need to quickly understand normal clipping.
Right, the baseline.
Exactly. In the recent hybrid eras of Formula One, clipping is simply when a car depletes its allocated electrical energy near the end of a long straightaway. The electric motor gracefully stops deploying extra power, the car relies solely on the internal combustion engine, and its acceleration plateaus. It just stops pulling as hard against the aerodynamic drag.
Which is frustrating for a driver trying to make a pass, sure, but it is predictable. You know it's coming.
Predictable being the absolute key word. Super clipping, on the other hand, is an extreme, highly aggressive, and frankly counterintuitive version of this.
It's insane.
It isn't just the electric motor running out of juice and shutting off. Under these new rules, the electric motor actually goes into reverse.
In reverse.
It transforms into an active generator to aggressively harvest kinetic energy to recharge the battery. And it does this while the car is still on the straight, while the driver still has the throttle pedal pinned to the floor, actively trying to achieve top speed.
I love the analogies the source uses to explain this feeling because it sounds completely contradictory to the fundamental concept of motor racing. It's unhinged.
It really is.
I want you to imagine you are driving your car down a highway. You are trying to merge, you're trying to reach top speed, and suddenly an invisible parachute deploys out the back. Just bam. Or picture yourself pedaling a bicycle as fast as humanly possible, sprinting for a finish line, and someone suddenly slaps a massive, heavy bicycle dynamo onto your tires.
You'd go over the handlebars.
Exactly. The car isn't just failing to accelerate further, it is actively electronically braking itself on the straightaway while the internal combustion engine is screaming at maximum RPM trying to push it forward.
It creates a profound mechanical contradiction. The driver is applying maximum throttle demand with the thermal engine, but the electrical system is actively applying a massive braking torque to the rear axle. Why? Just to ensure the battery has enough charge for the acceleration phase of the next corner.
When you lay it out like that, it forces the question, why on earth would any team design a race car to fight itself?
Because they are a slave to the computers.
The algorithms.
The source notes that offline, multi-million-dollar computer simulations dictate that this bizarre, contradictory technique is technically the absolute most efficient way to manage a lap time over the course of a race distance.
On paper.
On paper, the algorithm simply calculates that it is mathematically better to sacrifice top speed at the very end of a straight, aggressively harvest that kinetic energy right then, and use it to blast out of the subsequent slow corner.
But the real world, with 20 massive cars on a track, isn't a sterile computer simulation.
No, and that is exactly where the paddock is facing a massive safety versus simulation debate right now. Superclipping creates terrifyingly large speed differentials between cars on the fastest parts of the track.
This is the scary part.
Imagine if the car ahead hits its algorithmic threshold, goes into superclipping, and effectively throws out that invisible parachute.
At 200 miles an hour.
Yes. But the car, tucked right into its slipstream, behind, hasn't started clipping yet. The closing speeds are instantly dangerous. We're talking catastrophic rear-end collision potential.
The source points out there is actually a fierce debate among the engineers about this exact danger. Some are arguing that the alternative forcing drivers to manually lift and coast, where they take their foot off the gas early at the end of a straight to save energy, is actually more dangerous because human beings are unpredictable in wheel-to-wheel combat.
Right, humans make mistakes.
They argue that supercripping might technically be safer because at least the computers manage the deceleration predictably.
That's the counterargument.
But regardless of which side of that debate you fall on, the reality is that the drivers are no longer fighting each other for position. They are fighting the car's operating system to manage energy.
It fundamentally rewrites the job description of a Formula One driver. They transition from being gladiators, fighting the raw limits of mechanical grip and bravery, to highly paid systems managers overseeing an algorithmic, pre-programmed deployment of energy.
Which brings us to the most crucial perspective of all. How does this translate to you, the fan watching at home on a Sunday?
The viewer.
Because that is the ultimate stress test for any regulation change. If the viewer at home feels alienated, the sport's entire financial model collapses. You mentioned earlier that from the grandstands, it looks somewhat normal. The source uses the term dissimulate. How exactly are the cars hiding this internal chaos from the TV cameras?
The wide television shots are surprisingly forgiving because of the active aerodynamics. Under these 2026 rules, the front and rear wings are actively shifting angles on the straights to massively reduce drag.
They flatten out.
Exactly. This sudden reduction in drag helps the cars slice through the air, which effectively masks the fact that the powertrain is doing incredibly weird, contradictory things with energy harvesting. To the naked eye tracking a car from a helicopter shot, the speed looks consistent.
But when the source author watched the onboard cameras during the opening race, specifically pulling up the feeds from Charles Leclerc and George Russell, what exactly did they see that broke that illusion?
The reality inside the cockpit, transmitted through the onboard cameras and microphones, completely shatters the illusion of speed. The source describes a barrage of bizarre, auditory and visual cues.
The track engineer specifically noted the sound of the engine, right?
Yes.
Yes.
The downshifts sound completely fake, almost synthetic, because the energy recovery system is heavily interfering with the engine braking. The internal combustion engine itself sounds like it is constantly being choked back.
Wow.
Like a wild animal on a very short electronic leash, never allowed to fully breathe or reach its natural screaming crescendo. And perhaps the most jarring detail is that you can clearly hear the electric motor whining and deploying a massive amount of power right through the middle of the corners,
When they shouldn't be.
acting completely independently of what the driver's right foot is doing with the throttle pedal.
The sensory experience of Formula One, the deafening roar, the pure mechanical violence of the cars being wrestled around a track, is a foundational part of its global appeal.
It's why we watch.
Yes. When it starts sounding like a heavy-duty vacuum cleaner fighting a lawnmower, governed by a silicon microchip, it loses that visceral emotional impact. The source even notes a very strong suspicion within the paddock that Formula One broadcasters might be subtly censoring or intentionally reducing the amount of onboard footage they use on television.
Hiding it.
Precisely because the cars sound so strange and unnatural to the audience.
And look, if the broadcasters are actively hiding the onboard perspective, which has historically been the sport's most thrilling camera angle, that tells you everything you need to know about their confidence in the entertainment value of this product. It highlights a massive complexity problem. The source makes a highly relevant comparison to Formula E, a series where our expert source actually engineers cars.
We've seen this exact same complexity issue plague Formula E for years.
Precisely. In Formula E, you have race outcomes decided by incredibly complex energy harvesting strategies, invisible undercuts based on fractional battery percentages, mandatory attack modes tied to specific energy thresholds.
It's a math test.
It is highly strategic, intellectually fascinating engineering, sure, but to the casual viewer on a Sunday afternoon, it is completely impenetrable. You see a car suddenly drop 3 seconds off the pace, and unless you are staring at a spreadsheet of raw telemetry, you have absolutely no idea why it happened.
Now, to be fair to the audience, Formula One has spent the last decade successfully educating fans on certain layers of complexity. 10 years ago, talking about thermal tire degradation or the strategic difference between a medium and hard compound in a sports bar would be unthinkable.
True.
Now, casual fans deeply understand the undercut. But this new electrical management, this invisible superclipping and active harvesting feels like a bridge too far for the human brain to track while watching a race.
Which is exactly why the source introduces what they call the bar test, which is perhaps the most vital metric for any televised sport.
He found this concept brilliant. So smart. The source contrasts the current hyper-complex state of Formula One with MotoGP, the premier class of motorcycle racing. MotoGP passes the bar test with absolute flying colors.
Every time.
You can be sitting in a crowded bar, having a drink with friends, glancing up at the television with the sound completely muted, and you instantly, intuitively understand the narrative of what is happening. It is pure. It is simply a human being on a machine, leaning into a high-speed corner, risking everything.
Risking their life.
The narrative of bravery versus physics is instantly legible to anyone watching.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Formula One is actively failing that bar test under these new regulations. If you, as a viewer at home, need to constantly process a chaotic, cluttered on-screen graphic showing live battery deployment cycles, active aerodynamic states, and superclipping harvest targets for 20 different cars simultaneously, just understand who has the advantage going into a braking zone.
It's exhausting.
The sport has fundamentally lost its narrative thread. Racing, at its absolute core, needs to be tangibly understandable. Formula One cars have historically been limited by physical, real-world constraints.
Yeah.
How much fuel is sloshing in the tank, how much physical rubber is left on the surface of the tires.
Things we can picture in our heads.
Exactly. Those are physical limitations the human mind easily grasps and sympathizes with.
It feels real.
It does. But having a multi-million-dollar state-of-the-art powertrain that literally cannot provide full power for an entire single lap, despite having a completely full tank of fuel, it feels intensely artificial to racing purists. It doesn't feel like a driver finding the absolute physical limit of a machine. It feels like an imposed electronic limit holding the driver back.
Like a video game.
When you require complex on-screen graphics just to explain why a car that was going 200 miles per hour is suddenly going 180 on a straightaway, you are actively alienating the audience.
So what does this all mean? We are looking at a sport that has historically prided itself on being the absolute pinnacle of human and mechanical performance, suddenly waking up to the realization that they might have engineered the actual sport right out of the cars.
The human element is gone.
Formula One is caught in a brutal existential tug of war. On one side, you have the hyper-efficient, highly complex, environmentally conscious demands of modern automotive manufacturers who want to use the track as an R&D lab. On the other side, you have the primal, easily understandable, visceral thrill of speed and danger that actually makes millions of people want to tune in and watch on a Sunday afternoon.
It is a profound conflict between sterile engineering perfection and messy human entertainment. And this raises an important question.
Let's hear it.
As our everyday road cars become increasingly like rolling, hyper-efficient computers, silent, practically autonomous, and entirely governed by software updates, will the ultimate luxury in future entertainment be a return to sheer, unassisted, mechanical simplicity? Will the sports of tomorrow have to actively and artificially dumb themselves down, stripping away the complex software and the efficiency algorithms just to remind us what raw, unfiltered human struggle actually looks like?
It is a fascinating, slightly terrifying thought to leave you with today. Are we approaching a future where we have to mandate mechanical simplicity just to feel something when we watch a race? We want to warmly thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep questioning the hidden mechanics behind the sports and the technologies you love, because as we've seen today, what looks like perfect progress on an engineer spreadsheet definitely doesn't always translate to the real world. Don't forget to follow DRS Zone on all platforms. Catch us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube for more high-octane analysis. We will see you on the next deep dive.